It's a hot August afternoon at the Milton landing, where we are once again on the high iron of the CSX River line, this time to see Q004 on the final leg of its journey, taking the siding to await the upcoming northbound. Once Q004 is settled in the siding, Q410, the northbound Q004 is waiting for, continues north at track speed with BC Rail 4619. 4619 was once one of the 26 C40-8Ms that ran under the British Columbia Railway. The unit was built in April of 1990 and ran for a total of 13 years before BC Rail was sold to Canadian National. The 26 former BC Rail units along with Canadian National's 55 ran for another 17 years until spring of 2020, when CN began retiring the wide-body Dash 8s, resulting in a third of them being sold to scrappers and the rest put into storage. But 4619, along with 3 others, still remain in active service, but with CN's recent order of 75 new locomotives, newer units will likely finish the job. The next week, we are positioned at Control Point SK on the Route 9W overpass, where nothing has seemed to change here except that the signal replacement project was complete. After a few minutes of waiting, one of the yard switchers is seen pulling a cut of cars out of the classification yard before backing into the north departure yard. While the yard switcher continues out of the classification yard, Q158 bypasses them and continues onto the river line, southbound for South Kearney, New Jersey. Once Q158 is southbound on the river line, we focus back onto the yard switcher as they back down towards the north departure yard.
We're ready to go. We are 3.5
Well, let me send a message to the chief. Coming out one main.
Once out of sight, we move to South Albany Road, where we get the best possible view of the CSX locomotive shops without being on railroad property. Today it's full of all sorts of locomotives, either stored, serviced, or waiting maintenance and servicing, or ready to be put on the next train. Upon arrival, the shop switcher is seen, moving east as the power for Q368 is pulling ahead after just arriving onto the receiving yard. Once 3155 is ahead of the yard, we see that the shop switcher has tied on to Connecticut Department of Transportation 130, back from being rebuilt, and also GMTX 2328, which is currently leased by the Housatonic. A few MP15 switchers can also be seen, looking to be stored or unused. Driving back to the yard entrance, we see the hump switcher, heading to the west end to shove Q368 up and over the hump, just as the shop switcher backs 130 onto base 6E. Connecticut Department of Transportation 130 used to be one of the 5 BL20GHs in a New Haven paint scheme, but with 130 being the last rebuild, the New Haven paint scheme is no more. 130 will be sent out on Q701 later tonight, where it will be delivered to Metro North. The Canadian National units are also heading out tonight, on Q627 to Buffalo and later Macmillan Yard in Toronto. On the Mohawk, we position in Fonda, when Amtrak 284 speeds east towards Albany and later Penn Station. After P284, we reposition further west at Keeter's Rift, where we see Q626 with 5 units on the head end. 4 out of the 5 are dead in tow after being picked up in Syracuse. In Herkimer, we are just in time for Amtrak 48, the Lakeshore Limited, moving at track speed through CP 225. After Amtrak 48, we parted ways from the Mohawk subdivision and repositioned back at Elwood 2 days later, as CSX Q635 heads west at track speed. Continuing east, we position along Route 5 as Amtrak 283 heads west bound for Niagara Falls, New York. After 283, we continue east onto the Selkirk subdivision, where signals indicate a westbound is in the block, and that westbound is Q157 out of South Kearney, New Jersey. As evening falls, we see Q434 in Selkirk getting a restricting as they slowly proceed onto the inbound receiving track into the receiving yard. As 434 makes their way into the receiving yard, it was time to call it a trip. And as always from the Weathered Rails, thanks for watching.